We're trying to make sense of where things stand. By my assessment, we are on the brink of launching another wave of strikes of fresh air and missile offensive. The simplest way I can put it is this: President Trump has stepped onto a fast track toward disaster, and he seems intent on pulling as many people along with him as possible. I say that because I see no evidence whatsoever that what we are about to do will produce a different result from everything we have already tried. Now, from what I can gather at a glance, we appear to have assembled greater firepower this time around than we did previously. The Air Force in particular has expanded its presence, with heavy bombers now either inside the theater or positioned very close to it. We are also looking at a significant stockpile of advanced munitions, possibly even larger than what was deployed last time. Weapons like the Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff Missile were launched in enormous numbers before, and indications suggest we may match or exceed that figure this time. But here is the core problem. Nothing fundamental has changed on the opponent's end. Their positions hold, their capabilities remain intact. So when I hear suggestions floated one day about some diplomatic paper being discussed, only for that to be dismissed as fiction within 24 hours, and then partially walked back again shortly after, it tells you everything about the chaos driving these decisions. What I do know with certainty is that you do not assemble that volume of air and naval power in a region just for appearances. This kind of buildup means action is coming, and yet none of it is going to intimidate Iran. Geographically, Iran sits inside what amounts to a natural fortress, mountains surrounding it on multiple sides, and some of the most brutal desert terrain on the planet to the south. There is no military option on the table that is going to fundamentally shift their posture. If anything, I believe Iran will enter this next phase in a stronger position than before. Their air defense systems are likely more capable now. They have received substantial technical assistance from China. Russia has been providing intelligence support, and perhaps most significantly, Iran now operates within a full strategic alliance with both Russia and China. I cannot speak to the specific contents of the recent conversation between President Trump and President Putin, though it reportedly ran for 90 minutes to 2 hours. What came out of Moscow afterward was notable. Putin apparently told Trump directly, "Do not go down this road." The message, as conveyed, was that further escalation could produce consequences far worse than anything seen so far. Whether Trump heard that warning or processed it in any meaningful way is another question entirely, but the fact that it was said, and said plainly, matters. Iran has not been sitting still. By most serious estimates, they have spent at least 2 decades, some analysts say closer to 3, constructing and reinforcing the military infrastructure they now possess. Underground facilities built into mountain ranges, capabilities embedded deep within the geography of the country. This was not accidental. Iranian strategic planners always viewed a major confrontation with the United States as a genuine possibility, something to be prepared for rather than merely feared. Historically, Iran respected American military power and feared a direct conflict with us. That respect has not disappeared, but it has been recalibrated. If you compare Iran's performance during the 12-day conflict several months ago with their performance in the more recent exchanges, the improvement in lethality and operational effectiveness is significant. I expect the same pattern to continue. Just as the United States is reportedly bringing advanced hypersonic systems into the theater, I anticipate Iran will introduce new capabilities of its own, some of which I believe have been supplied or enabled by China. There are credible reports of Chinese aircraft delivering missiles, technology, and technical personnel directly to Iran. Chinese specialists are believed to be on the ground, particularly in the missile sector and in unmanned systems production. Russia, meanwhile, has been deeply involved in trying to strengthen Iran's integrated air defense network, though that network has underperformed so far. Russia has also made considerable efforts to deliver humanitarian aid and essential supplies to Iran under pressure. When American officials point to Iran's collapsing currency and deteriorating economy as signs of imminent defeat, they are not entirely wrong about the economic damage. But they are missing the larger point. Iran anticipated this. They prepared for it. Key government infrastructure has been evacuated and dispersed. Whatever is being said publicly, Iranian leadership is clearly planning for the worst-case scenario and organizing accordingly. One additional possibility I want to flag for this round: the potential use of American ground forces. We have several thousand paratroopers and Marines in the region. It is conceivable they could be used to seize an island position or conduct a raid on a facility like Bandar Abbas, not for any lasting strategic purpose, but to create the optics of a tangible success. Deep and genuine connection to that identity. Removing a government does not remove a civilization. That effort also failed. The bombing continued, but the goalposts moved again, this time toward broad destruction, an attempt to so thoroughly damage Iranian infrastructure and economy that the state itself would begin to disintegrate. When exotic munitions ran low and inventory constraints became acute, a ceasefire was declared. Officials on all sides shaped the narrative to suggest Iran had been brought to its knees. That was not accurate. Iran was not begging. The ceasefire served American logistical needs as much as anything else, and now we are preparing to go back in. The consequences of this conflict are not confined to the Persian Gulf. Oil prices in markets like India have risen sharply and continue to climb. Diesel supplies are under serious strain, and diesel is what moves goods. It runs the trucks that stock shelves, the freight systems that supply factories, the agricultural equipment that produces food. Airlines are already canceling flights in growing numbers, and that trend will accelerate. Those who frame these disruptions as acceptable short-term costs in service of a larger strategic goal are not being honest about the scale of the damage or the absence of any clear strategic gain. Iran has never been a genuine existential threat to the United States. The grievances that exist between our two countries did not require a war, and the argument that Iran is on the verge of building a nuclear weapon that will threaten the world obscures the reality that they have not chosen to build one, though continued military pressure may now push them in that direction, as it would rationally push any state in their position. Perhaps the most significant long-term consequence of this entire episode is what it has done to the relationship between Washington and Beijing. China has now announced that its companies will not comply with American sanctions targeting refineries linked to Iranian oil imports. This is not a minor diplomatic friction. This is a direct and public rejection of American economic authority by the world's second-largest economy. The tariff disputes of recent years, as contentious as they were, ultimately saw China engage and negotiate. That era appears to be closing. China is tightening export controls on critical minerals. It is accelerating the development of alternative supply chains. It is reducing its holdings of American Treasury debt and reallocating reserves toward harder assets, including gold. It is systematically reducing its economic exposure to the United States while expanding its influence across the developing world. China built this influence not through military intervention or coercion, but through sustained investment in commerce and infrastructure, exactly the model that made the United States powerful before we chose a different path. Today, visitors to Chinese cities describe the infrastructure and development with the same language that foreigners once used to describe America. We built that reputation, and then we chose to stake our foreign policy on military dominance instead. President Trump believes American military force is the primary instrument of foreign policy. The results of that belief applied in the Persian Gulf are now visible to the entire world. Before he travels to Beijing, he would benefit enormously from a genuine reckoning with what has been achieved and what has not. He will not find a Chinese leadership prepared to accommodate American demands. He will find a leadership that has watched this war carefully and drawn its own conclusions. Is Iran in a stronger position today than it was before this conflict began? I believe the case can be made that it is not just militarily, but in terms of global standing. For much of the past 2 centuries, Iran has operated on the margins of great power politics. That has changed. In the eyes of much of the world, particularly the global South, Iran has demonstrated that a mid-sized nation can withstand a sustained military campaign by the most powerful country on earth and remain standing. That is a powerful signal. It does not require Iran to have won every exchange. It requires only that they survived and did not surrender. They have done that. The idea of a ground invasion of Iran is not serious military thinking. The logistics alone make it nearly impossible. The terrain, mountain ranges to the north and west, harsh deserts to the south, would defeat any invading force long before it reached any meaningful objective. The force required to occupy Iran would dwarf anything the United States has deployed since the Second World War, and even then success would not be guaranteed. History is not kind to powers that have underestimated that lesson. There is a way out of this. It is not complicated. It requires political courage, which is in shorter supply than missiles. A president willing to address the American public honestly could say the following: we undertook a military campaign against Iran based on assessments that turned out to be incorrect. We have done serious damage. We have also failed to achieve our stated objectives. Continuing this course will not change that. It will only extend the harm to Iran, to the global economy, and to our own country. Therefore, I am directing an immediate halt to military operations. I am calling on Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz to international shipping. and I am committing this administration to finding a diplomatic path forward, one that addresses our legitimate concerns without requiring the destruction of another country. Most Americans would accept that. Most of the world would welcome it. It would require acknowledging a mistake, which is difficult for any leader, but the alternative, another wave of strikes, more economic disruption, and a widening confrontation that now involves the strategic interests of Russia and China, is far worse than the admission. The question is whether anyone in a position of authority is willing to say it.